Hey, thanks for tuning in to Twang and Bang. This is the new G43X from Glock, which is basically their popular G43 with a longer grip and magazine to match. This is a lesson in making assumptions because, like many of you watching when this was first announced, I could not figure out why it existed due to its massive overlap in specs on paper with the G19. But like a lot of my friends who started with the same assumptions, I became a believer as soon as I literally got my hands on one. Sportsman's Guide sent this to me to try out, and I'm really glad that they did because I doubt I ever would have bought one based on my really bad assumptions. Yes, this is about the same size and weight as a G19, and yes, you do give up 5 rounds of capacity, but the rest of the differences are only small on paper. In fact, the G43X in my hand is my favorite Glock of all time, and I do not say that lightly. Let me jump to the punchline and say that my Gen 5 G19 will continue to be my ADC gun for reasons I'll get to later. But in certain circumstances, this is going to be the Glock that I carry and the Glock that I recommend. And that's why the G43X is what's coming up next on Twang and Bang. I found that the Glock 43X is something you need to pick up, you need to hold, because that was the aha moment for me in thinking, why would they even offer this pistol? Because it kind of looks the same size as a G19, which is still my EDC, but it feels better. It has a really nice feel in the hand. It's much snappier because it's got a smaller, lighter slide. And of course you have fewer rounds, less weight in the magazine. But no problems controlling it. Very shootable. I really, really like the form factor of this. This is something that I actually will carry times where my G19 is just too heavy. It's not even so much about printing, but when I'm out running, I'll be honest, right now, I don't carry. I know a lot of the guys that you think probably carry all the time, I've called and said, hey, what do you guys run with? I haven't gotten a hold of anybody that actually runs while carrying a gun, and that's something that I've been wanting to change, and I would be willing to run with this when I wouldn't my G19. That is fantastic. The one thing that I would change, and it's an easy thing to do, is the grip. It has the raised dots like other Glocks, but they just don't feel as grippy. They don't feel like they protrude as much. And I would like more texture. And that's something that I might send this off with my first Glock ever to get some grip work done, some texturing done. Doesn't have finger grooves, don't need to get those removed. But oh my gosh, I really like to hold this. I really like to shoot this. I just have to get myself a holster and start carrying it. People have been asking Glock for a single stack 9 for as long as I can remember, and just a few short years ago, Glock finally did it with the G43. However, the G43 is a subcompact with a super short grip that not only left many shooters' pinkies dangling, but also limited capacity to that of a typical .38 special revolver. Many decided that the G43 really wasn't what a lot of us were asking for. Enter the G43X, which adds grip length and magazine capacity to turn the G43 into a lot more like what I had in mind when I envisioned a single stack Glock 9. Well, it's not truly a single stack because the mag is just wide enough to allow the rounds to stagger left and right, which probably was necessary to fit a 6th round into a G43 mag. This is one area where I wish the G43X was different because I would have really liked to have an even slimmer Glock that would have been possible with a true single stack magazine, but I get why they made this particular design choice. In the end though, lengthening the grip on the single and a half stack G43 resulted in a gun that is very close in specs on paper to the G19, which is why so many of us were scratching our heads when it was announced. The G43X is exactly the same height as the G19, but for the other specs, I think it's helpful if you think about the differences in percentages. It's 11% shorter. It's 18% narrower. It's 25% lighter when fully loaded. That 25% weight difference is especially much more noticeable than I would have expected. The trigger reach is 5% shorter and the trigger pull is 8% less, both of which are enough to be significant to people with smaller hands, especially when you factor in the narrower grip. I have to admit that even as I'm saying these things for this video, I'm scratching my head as to why the G43X makes sense, but in my hand, the answer keeps revealing itself. I think a better way of describing it would be to say it's the G19 that doesn't feel like you're gripping a piece of scrap wood. It's the Glock that doesn't feel like a Glock. You do give up 5 rounds, and that should not be taken lightly at all. I certainly don't, which is why this G19 is still my EDC. However, I think the G43X deserves to be very popular. I can reach the slide stop without adjusting my grip. I can easily drop a mag, again, without adjusting my grip. The reach to the trigger on other 9mm Glocks has never been an issue for me, but that 5% shorter reach combined with a slimmer grip actually translates to a lot easier time wrapping the finger around a trigger. This is the Glock to try if you can't get over how blocky other Glocks can feel, or if you have trouble reaching all of the controls. Speaking of grip, the G43X forgoes the interchangeable back straps found on many Gen 4 and Gen 5 Glocks, but they did put a generous beaver tail on the grip nonetheless. Something that a lot of shooters wish Glock would do for the standard grip found on pistols that do have the interchangeable grips actually. Glock calls their grip texture RTF, which I think stands for rough texture frame, but on the G43X, it's actually not so rough at all. In fact, here's one other area I wish were different because I don't find it rough enough. Shooting this pistol with sweaty hands was more challenging than it needed to be. The RTF on my G19 is much more pronounced without being so bad that it grates the skin off of my side when I carry. I wish they would have just gone with this version of the RTF since it's already well proven, and I'm probably going to send this off to get a better pattern laser engraved. For some reason, Glock decided to use a silver finish on the slide. They say it's a variation of the finish they put on the G19X, which has survived pretty rigorous testing the US military did to that pistol, so I'm not really worried about it being a problem. Originally, I thought I'd hate having to sight over a bright slide, but I found that the contrast between the silver slide and the black sights actually makes picking up the sights easier. That was unexpected. Speaking of the sights, I hate them. I mean, my feelings for them are pretty toxic, and it's not just because they're plastic. It's because the sight outline and the sighting aids don't co-witness for me. What do I mean by that? Sighting aids are the dots or lines or whatever is placed on sights to make them easier to find and align. With Glock factory polymer sights, the cup and the ball are your sighting aids. This is where I have to mention that the only way to show you on video exactly what I'm going to tell you would be if I had a camera with the same size lens as in our eyes. I don't. So any sight picture I attempt to make in front of this lens will not look enough like what your eye will see to even bother trying. That said, if you align these sights by their sight outline, the ball on the front sight is cut off at the bottom by the notch on the rear sight. If you align these sights by their sighting aids to where the full ball is visible above the rear notch, the sight outline is off by a lot. With such a short sight radius, this makes a huge difference in point of impact. In fact, it's about 9 inches at only 10 yards, and that's unacceptable. I just don't get it. If I line up the sights using the ball and cup, I shoot pretty much point of aim. However, If I line up the sight outline, I'm shooting 9 inches low at 10 yards. I just don't know why anyone behind the design of these sights thinks this is okay. The sighting aids and the sight outline should co-witness, always. That's the only thing I can't live with about the G43X though, but of course it's easily solved with aftermarket sights. I honestly think that people worry way too much about printing when they carry. When your pistol does print, it rarely looks like a pistol except to people who are already believers in carrying one for self-defense. And I'm not personally worried about letting those people know we're on the same team. I even accidentally open carried once in a North Raleigh Target when my shirt got tucked in behind my G19 as I was getting out of my truck. I didn't realize it until I saw my reflection getting back to my truck, and that's when I remembered the kind of longer stares that I was getting as I was walking through the store. I wouldn't count on people not panicking or calling 911 to at least have law enforcement check me out, but that's when I realized, you know what, I probably don't really need to freak out about every little crease around my carry firearm. That's why for the vast majority of the time, I'm just gonna carry my Gen 5 G19. And the G43X is just gonna fill in those gaps where I'm just not gonna carry my G19 because of its bulk, like when I'm running. All that said, if I lived in a band state where I was already limited to just 10 rounds, I think the 43X is a no-brainer choice over the G19. That's probably a big reason why it exists in the first place. But as I found out, its appeal is much broader than that. And while I'll continue to recommend the G19 to people looking for their first offensive handgun, I really am glad that Glock came out with the 43X, and I do look forward to shooting this a whole lot more. I'd really like to thank Sportsman's Guide for sending this to me. They even set up a discount code for my viewers. Use code TWANGnBANG to save $20 on orders $100 or more, and if you use the link that's pinned in the comments, you'll even support the channel while you do so. Be sure to follow me on Facebook and Instagram. You can see the links right here. And be sure to sign up for my mailing list because it's the only surefire way to stay in touch with me no matter what happens to my channel here on YouTube. I really appreciate you watching Twang and Bang, and I hope to see you next time.